Hi, everybody. Okay. So how's everyone doing? I guess I'm the guy who stands between you and alcohols. That's a tough position to be in D.C. So I just came in from Wyoming. We had a big event. The total registration was about 100,000 people. We had about 900 in Wyoming, and we were all around the world. Miami, London, Cape Town, Tokyo, Berlin. Mihaela put out some stuff here in D.C., and it was a lot of fun. We got to meet a lot of very interesting people. So there's IO Global, my company, and there's the types of products we work on, like Atala Prism, Cardano, and so forth. What we are at our core is a systems company. And our goal, our vision, is to improve the systems of the world for everyone everywhere. So what the heck does that mean? What's the purpose of that? Well, when you look at things like governments, they're collections of systems working together, hopefully for the greater good of the trustees, for the people, the beneficiaries. And governments do things. They regulate marketplaces. They hold elections to endow consent into specialized actors, so they have the ability to arrest people or protect people or run the fire service. They do collective investments that are for the social good. For example, they go ahead and build rockets to take us to the moon. They fight wars where it's necessary. Now, most of human society has been constructed to stave off war, famine, and disease. That's why we build governments. That's why we build societies. And thus our institutions, our philosophies, our religions, these types of things are in some way constructed around those concepts. What's happened is that technology has started moving very quickly. If you take a look at an axe that was made during the Bronze Age and you compare it to an axe that was made in Germany during the Middle Ages, it doesn't look too different. It's quite familiar. If you take a look at when the Wright brothers first took to the sky to when we landed on the moon, it's about 60-some years. And that's only accelerating because of the internet, because of globalization, mass distribution of education. There is a rapid progression of the capabilities of mankind as a whole. And thus the institutions that we have inherited don't work as well as they should. As a consequence, faith in those institutions is decaying. So, you could see it in everyday places. You poll people and you say, do you think your vote counts? Depending on the political spectrum, some people say yes, some people say no. You look at people and say, do you trust science? Some people say yes, some people say no. What they're really saying is we don't trust the institutions behind these types of things. We think that there's doublespeak, bias, agendas, these types of things. There's a lack of honesty and credibility. This is the birth of our industry, the cryptocurrency space, the blockchain space. Where did Bitcoin come from? Embedded in the very first block in Bitcoin was a reference to the bailout and the financial crisis. It wasn't the amazing job that the institutions of the global regulatory and financial community was doing that created Bitcoin. It was the lack thereof of that job. It was the collapse of these things, the crises, we had to abandon our principles to save our principles. It's so easy when you're in a position of power to find an exception to the rule. We were told last year we could print trillions of dollars, and somehow this is not going to have any impact on inflation. Then we get told, well, as long as you discount the price of beef, chicken, and pork, and wood, inflation is not so bad. You see, this is the reality we live in. And people, they internalize it, they understand it, and they're looking for alternatives. They're looking for a return to trust in institutions in some way or shape or form. Now, that is not a political issue. It's a human issue at its very core. We have human rights. We want to be treated with fairness, dignity, honesty, reciprocity. We want to know that the people that we do business with are reputable. We want to know that when we express ourselves, we're heard. We want to know that when we enter into a commercial relationship, that commercial relationship has rule of law. The great nations of the 20th century were not the nations defined by their military power. That was an after effect of the greatness. They were the ones defined by the innovators, the rule of law, the businesses, the innovations they brought, the creativity that they had. And it just so happened they built militaries to protect those things because they valued them. There's never been a time in human history where that was the case, but that was the century we just came from. So as we look to the future, the point of our industry, the blockchain industry and the cryptocurrency industry, is to have a frank conversation of how are we going to live in a world, regulate a world, control a world where we don't want empires anymore. We don't want the American system or the Chinese system or the European system. We'd like to live in one global community where we have basic principles, no matter where you happen to be born, are universal. Our company does an enormous amount of work in Africa. I've been to 52 countries over the last few years. We have an office in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Next month I'm going all throughout Africa, South Africa, Burundi, Malawi, Zanzibar, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt. That's quite the tour in 3 weeks. Right now, I think we have about 5 heads of state. And every single one of them tell me the same things again and again and again. How do we compete? How do we attract direct foreign investment? How do we make people believe that we've made progress and our countries are the countries to invest in, build in, create jobs in? They all say the same thing. The faces change, the flags change, the ministries change, the pitch changes. You get to see some cool stuff. Egypt, you get to see the pyramids. How about that? It's fun. But they're saying the same things, just in different languages and different ways. And I always have the same answer. How strong are your institutions? How much do people believe in those institutions? Why do they believe in those institutions? Where does the trust and credibility come from for those things? And the point of the blockchain space is it's the first time we've built a social system that goes from don't be evil to can't be evil. The rules can't change. And it seems so simple, but yet it's so powerful because when you think about the scientific revolution, the rules don't change because you want them to. There's been more than one mountaineer that suddenly wished that gravity didn't apply to him. And there's certainly plenty of people who build things for a living who wish they could change the laws of physics just a little bit for a competitive advantage. But you can't. They are what they are, and no matter who you are, what language you speak, where you come from, you're treated equally. So when you build systems with those types of bedrocks, they have absolute certainty and belief. People connect to them. People understand them. And there's also reproducibility. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you've been told, what you've been said. You can verify the things that you are seeing are true. One of the greatest principles and properties of Bitcoin, for example, is this idea of inclusive accountability. When someone sends you a transaction containing some Bitcoin in it, you don't trust them. You don't trust a bank. You don't trust a financial institution. You don't trust a regulator. You don't trust anyone. You have enough information, a copy of the system, to be able to validate the thing that you're seeing is right. Can you imagine how good life would be if that was the case in all your dealings? Someone walks up to you and says, I'm a lawyer, and you can instantly look at them and know that they're actually on the bar and they're a real lawyer. Somebody walks up to you, I'm a doctor, same thing. If someone says, okay, well, you know, this is what happened on Tuesday, you get video evidence of it right there. That would be great. The world usually doesn't work that way. And when we look at our institutions, they normally don't work that way either. Look at our military spending, for example. It's just a great case study. Where the hell does all that money go? And every time someone asks, they tend to forget about it. Oh yeah, we lost those records, so sorry. Pick your favorite government agency. Talk about TRICARE and the VA, holy hell. There's so many places where trillions of dollars are spent, many promises are made, and every time you're told it, you see it, you cannot personally verify it. The real power of Bitcoin is it opened the world up to the prospect and the idea that you have some social system where you can check yourself. And that gave us all the freedom to dream in a certain respect. It gave us the freedom to start asking, what other systems can we build where we have the inclusive accountability property? Could perhaps we build a voting system? When a vote happens, you can check and make sure it was recorded. That sounds interesting. Perhaps we can build a supply chain system when someone says this is organic or fair trade or environmentally sustainable or carbon neutral. Big topic. You can actually check that right on the label, right there, and you don't trust the vendor, the merchant, you don't trust King Soopers, you don't trust Kroger. You have a system that's built on principles and bedrock that can't change, not don't be evil, can't be evil at its core. That's really what this is all about. Now, why is it scary? Well, it's scary for three reasons. One, when you change institutions, it doesn't happen very often. And sometimes you get real lucky, and you get rid of kings and queens and emperors, and you get democracies and republics. And sometimes you get really unlucky, and you get the Soviet Union. I saw something earlier from a professor's presentation when he's talking about the metaverse. And he said, oh, people will escape into the metaverse because they want to escape regulation. And I couldn't help but remember a friend of mine who was a mathematician. His name was Sergey. He went to Moscow State. And I asked him, why did you go into mathematics? He said, that was the only way I could find freedom in the Soviet Union. Because none of the bureaucrats could understand math, so anytime I expressed myself in it, they wouldn't mind. There was no commissars. Think about that just for a moment. It's scary. When you change institutions, everything is up for grabs. What is freedom of speech? How much privacy should we have? Who gets to decide these things? What is good money? We had a great lecture about the nature of money. Well, okay, there's the textbook definition, the store of value, the means of account, these types of things. Okay? Means of exchange, unit of account. Well, what makes good money? I'd argue credit is deeply interconnected to that. The ability to forecast the value of the money 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future. Can you live in an economy with multiple currencies? Some for storing and some for means of exchange, some for unit of account. Can you break these things apart? Should you follow an inflationary or a deflationary monetary policy? Should your money be based on things that are immutable? Why do the Austrians love the gold standard? Because you can't lie in that standard. You can't print gold. It's just that simple. Do you need to create these types of restraints in your system or not? Depends on your faith in the institutions. Depends on the nature of the institutions, the winners and losers you want to have. What if we want to create a dual currency system where we have today money and future money? So as a thought experiment, and this is something our industry is going to enable and why it's so powerful and so scary. What if to buy a house, to buy property, to start a business, to go to school, you don't just pay for it in dollars. You pay for it in today dollars and $2,200. Dollars you earn for doing something good for somebody who lives 2 centuries from now. Okay, suddenly, now you have both a long-term and short-term horizon in the way you think and optimize. You don't want the world to be a disaster and the environment burnt out and all the species to go extinct, so you have to do stuff to prevent that in the year 2200. And that's the only way you can earn that money, right? Well, suddenly capitalism kicks in. And we have all these businesses that are actually building a future for people that we'll never meet and never see, will be long dead. But they're doing it because they're making a fortune. Meanwhile, they actually make the world a better place. Go figure, for our great-great-great-grandchildren. How do you do something like that? Well, you do that by issuing a currency that represents that, put some sort of logic behind it, and then suddenly incentives kick in, consumer behavior kicks in, and lo and behold, global warming is no longer a concern. Lo and behold, everybody's an environmentalist, especially ExxonMobil. Why? Because they make more money being an environmentalist than they do taking oil out of the ground. You see, one of the great lessons we've learned over the last century is if you incentivize it, they will do it. And one of the superpowers of the cryptocurrency space and its ability to transform institutions is the ability to align incentives for anything we want. And that's why people are so terrified. If you structure these things in the right way, you can get rid of CEOs and presidents and kings, centralization. Uber could go away, Airbnb can go away, all these tech monopolies, Google, Facebook, Apple, many of them are middlemen of necessity. You can actually replace them in many cases with protocols and software. So if you're at the top of the old society, wouldn't you be a little scared if new technology is coming that's going to change everything? But the lesson we've learned as the drum of technology beats is that it actually ought not to be terrifying. Because even if there are winners and losers as you restructure things, collectively humanity wins, always. Anytime you embrace something that makes society more resilient, sustainable, equal, fair, and give people a better access to opportunity in the future, overall life gets better for everybody, including the kings and the queens. Don't believe me? Would you like to trade for Rockefeller and live in the time he lived in with all of his money? The minute that you get an ulcer in your stomach, you could die. No antibiotics. That type of society. No airplanes around. You'd rather be middle class today. You have the internet. You have all this magic. You have all this lifestyle. You could be a king. Mansa Musa, richest man in Africa. So powerful that everywhere you go, he created inflation because he gave away so much gold. Most powerful man on the continent for his time. He would trade for any one of you for your lifestyle, for the power that you all have at your fingertips. And where did it come from? It came from a free society creating it. So we can never allow our fear of the unknown and technology corrupt the fact that if we embrace it the right way, it can take us to a much better future that solves a lot of problems. The 21st century is the most terrifying in human history because we have so many existential problems before us. When I was growing up, my dad was growing up, my grandfather was growing up, the only existential technology we had to worry about were nuclear weapons. That was the only one that could end all of us. The world took it seriously. That's why you had SALT and the Department of Energy and all these watchdog groups trying to constrain that. Now, the 21st century, you have nanotechnology, artificial general intelligence, you have CRISPR creating gain-of-function research, dozens and dozens and dozens of existential technologies, which are not just the provenance of nation states. These are the things that small groups of people, 10, 20, 30, well-motivated, well-intended perhaps, maybe not, could accidentally screw something up. It cascades and kills billions of people or devastates society. And somehow the institutions of yesterday are supposed to correct that. They simply can't. So the core of our industry, the blockchain industry, is about asking, how do you handle society where information, value, thought travels instantaneously? How do you handle society where people no longer buy the fictions and believe the narratives that they're told? There's no longer faith in the old way of doing things. They demand inclusive accountability. They can instantly fact check anything you say. How do you build a society when deepfakes are coming? And any one of us in 10 or 20 years can say anything and appear to be anybody. It's a hard question. So that's why we build what we build at my company. This is why we think what we think. This is the point of the industry at its core. I'm so tired of coming to conversations and, well, is it a security or not a security? Well, it's never a bloody fucking security. And don't tell me IPO registration is an easy thing. If you believe so, tell me which startup's done it successfully. None. Cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's done for pre-existing businesses with a decade of a track record or more in the United States. It's completely absurd to say that's a valid financing method. Furthermore, once the founders disappear and the company disappears, how is it still a security? Who files for it? Who registers for it? It's a completely new economy. We found the financial stem cell. Cryptocurrencies can be anything. You can wake up and they can be currencies. They can be commodities. They can be multi-incentive systems. They can be securities if you want them to be. They can be debt instruments if you want them to be. They're everything. You regulate them based on how they're used by the actors there and then at the moment of the transaction. It's just that simple. And, you know, I'd rather talk about more abstract things and get people interested in the fact that for the first time ever in your adult lives, you're actually in control of the restructuring of human society. People in our industry, for better or for worse, are making decisions today, probably unbeknownst to them, that will impact the way we live in the next few decades and throughout most of the 21st century, and how governments get along. Last year I had a conference and I invited Vint Cerf to come. Anybody know who Vint is? Few people. He created the internet with Bob Kahn. worked at DARPA at the time. And he had absolutely no idea the gravity or magnitude of the research he was doing at Stanford with Bob. He was just sitting there, and the design brief was, let's create some sort of decentralized network to connect some stuff together in case, nuclear weapons come off or something. Oh, sounds like a fun project. Let's go do that. And he just made arbitrary decisions. Oh, this is how big the address space should be. Oh, we don't need authentication. If there's a problem, we just pick up the phone book and call the guy on the other side. It's a small network. 4 billion computers, mobile computer. You're out of your damn mind. There's like 20 of them. They're the size of a room. And so those decisions he made in the creation of TCP/IP completely influence how your computer works, how your cell phone works, how we connect to the internet, the winners and losers of the entire ISP war. How AT&T, Cisco, all these other companies do business, completely made by the decisions of 2 people and some graduate students at Stanford. And we all inherit that, for better or for worse. So exactly the same situation is happening right now. The smart contract standards, the consensus standards. Are we going to have systems that give us truth by burning out the planet and using enormous amounts of electricity? Are we going to use other systems? There's philosophical reasons for both. We'll debate and discuss them. Somebody's going to win, and whoever wins, that's the way it is. And the next generation just has to deal with it, and they'll be told that's the way it is. These things are immutable after they set for at least decades to centuries. So it's important for everybody to take a step back and say, why are we here? Why are people scared? Why do we see the rhetoric? Why do we feel the way we do? And do understand that these young people, some old, working together, are basically deciding how the entire human race is going to get along or not get along. And there are very high stakes. Look at China, for example. Very harsh at times with it. I think social credit is one of the greatest evils mankind has ever come up with. I have no tolerance for a society where you're told that your entire value as a human being is compressed down to a number decided by a machine. It's just wrong. It's always going to be wrong. It's always been wrong. And if that's indoctrinated and institutionalized and linked in every single system, from the money system to the transportation system to your passport to your education system, and it's the sole decider of whether you get a job. It's the sole decider of whether people are allowed to associate with you. And it's going to get so pervasive that when augmented reality comes, people can see your credit score on your face when they look at you through their glasses, and they're told if they associate with people with scores too low, their own score goes down. How is this any different from the untouchable caste? How is this any different from creating a group of slaves in society? Just slaves to ideology and algorithms, not people. We cannot allow that future to exist, and we are ever so close to it. So the decisions we make in our industry will either prevent that or enable that, slow that down, resist that, or embrace that. Demanding that every single transaction has KYC and AML is an example of moving towards such a world. Because who controls that? Who decides that? Who are the legitimate agencies? What political lobbies do they have? You're going to solve decentralization by centralizing it around a handful of federated actors? You can't. And there's numerous other examples. The whole reason the internet works and has worked for so well and so long is because it's been free and open. And every time it's been broken is because people have tried to close it off, to restrict it, to build firewalls around it. Effectively, our industry in a nutshell is neutral. This technology is insanely powerful. That's why the prices are so high. It's like the definition of obscenity. You know it when you see it. The reason why we've gone from nothing to something so big in 12 years, $2 trillion. I understand it's 50 basis points, but blink your eyes and it'll be 5%. Blink your eyes again, it'll be 20%, 30%. It's eating the world and the youth. The reason why it's so significant is people do get it. Deep in their hearts, in their guts, something big is happening. Change is coming. We don't know who the winners and losers are going to be, but we know there will be winners and losers. And whatever this change is going to be, it's going to change everything. Businesses are just going to operate differently. Governments are just going to operate differently. And as these things take hold, they don't go back. I joined the cryptocurrency space when it was so small that I couldn't even find another person to join my meetup group down in Denver. There's 2 people who registered, me and another guy. He didn't show up, so I had a coffee with myself. And now it's at a position where when I went to Mongolia, I was out in the Gobi Desert riding camels, and the herder who lived in a ger, no running water, no internet, no electricity, none of these things, had Bitcoin. Think about this. 12 years, that's where we went. That's how big it's gotten. And at this rate of growth, it's going to eat everything, and the youth get it. If you look at anyone under the age of 25, statistically, they're significantly more likely to own a cryptocurrency than a stock or a bond. And they'll one day be in charge. And these principles they keep for life. They say, I should be able to vote online. I should be able to check everything myself. There should be sound money. Why not? Why the hell does the government have to be in control? They're just going to screw it up. Someone else should be. Some algorithm should keep all these things safe and secure. I should be able to sell anything I want anytime. You know, if I want to monetize my music, who the hell is here to stop me? They don't like restrictions and walls. So it's inevitable. And each and every one of you, in your own way, are going to be connected to this, either as consumers or producers. One day you're going to wake up and use the technologies our industries build just like you use your cell phone, and you probably won't even know it. Or some of you may choose to embrace and jump into the industry, and then you struggle with these hard questions. And there's winners and losers and egos and personalities. There's always been throughout the decades. But to the government officials listening, because I know we're live streaming to them, this industry isn't going anywhere. You can't regulate this industry out of existence. But if you work with this industry, this can be a renaissance and a restoration of all the ill will and bad faith that's occurred over the last century for our institutions, and a way for us to fix them, bring them back together, and achieve what we put on paper 200 plus years ago, the desire for a more harmonious union. I very firmly in my heart believe that the industry, the policymakers, from talking to Senator Lummis and many others, deep down inside get this too. And the goal we have through education, speeches, working with one another, is just simply to get people comfortable with this change, the inevitability of it, and to embrace a better future and to tackle the hardest problems mankind has ever faced. And as always, problems that are self-inflicted. And those are the best to solve. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And if we have time, I'd be happy to take a few questions.